You're all very welcome to this very special occasion where we honour and remember the team that brought the first All-Ireland glory to Offaly 100 years ago today. And just in case I forget to tell you later on, at the end of the night there'll be a cup of tea and a biscuit there for everybody, so in case I forget to tell you that. The order of events, there'll be a couple of short speakers, very shortly, 2 minutes each, they're told. So, and then we'll move on to the main presentation from Brendan Minnock, and then Michael Dignan will say a few words at the end, and we have a few other formalities to conclude with. So the first speaker is from Offaly Library, Honor Ridgway.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Honor Ridgway. I'm an executive librarian in Offaly Libraries, and I'm delighted to be here tonight representing the library service on this very special occasion. Offaly Libraries were thrilled to receive funding from the Commemorations Unit in the Department of Tourism, Culture, Arts, Gaeltacht, Sports and Media to plan an event around the great Offaly hurling victory of 1924. This event is titled Uniting Generations, the Centenary Celebration of Offaly's Hurling Champions. We engaged local historian Brendan Minnock to write a historical research paper on this famous sporting win. Local poet Eileen Casey then used Brendan's research paper to work with primary school children. In the 4 chosen schools, Scoil Prunchius Nefa Clara, St. Coleman's National School, Muckla, Monastoris National School Edenderry, and Mercy Primary School in Birr. Children delighted in using their creativity to celebrate and remember this momentous win through poetry and drawings, all of which will be published in a book and launched in our libraries shortly. For those who are not here this evening, especially the Offaly diaspora, Brendan's research paper has been published on the Offaly Libraries blog. We are also recording this event so that it can be viewed once published on our Offaly Libraries YouTube channel. It will also be available in our local studies collection for future reference. Tonight, I would like to thank those who assisted Offaly Libraries during this unique project. A big thank you to the Culture and Creativity team in Offaly County Council who made the application for Commemoration Unit funding. It has been wonderful to work with Brendan Minnock, Offaly GAA and Eileen Casey who ensured this project came to fruition. And of course to Evin O'Toole of Malfi Productions for recording this event tonight. I would also like to thank the management, teachers and students in the 4 primary schools who participated in the project. It was a pleasure to work with them and see their reimaginings of this historic win beating Cork 100 years ago. I am very proud to be from Offaly. Looking around me here this evening, I know that there is so much energy, skill, knowledge, passion and experience in this room that I firmly believe there are wonderful glory days ahead for Offaly hurling. Ifali Abu. So thank you very much for your time, and now I'll hand back to Brendan.
And like Charlie Haughey, I don't carry notes around with me, so just in case they get me in trouble. On behalf of the National History and Commemorations Committee in Croke Park, it's a huge honour to be involved here and to have been involved with Brendan on this project for some time, and Pat and a few others who have given their time. But Brendan, you'll see the research he's done, you'll see that through his presentation in a little while. It's absolutely incredible. We've finished the decade of centenaries, or we're just drawing to the end of the decade of centenaries. And there have been so many commemorations across the country for so many things that happened, we'll say 100 years ago, or within, that have been celebrated over the last 10 years or so. The GAA, it was a momentous time for the GAA as well, and we have commemorated many, many things. And in many counties, they are looking at those things that meant something in their history. Like Galway have been commemorating their 1923 All-Ireland success and so on. Kildare, they're putting in a big effort there to commemorate some of their football successes. Several other counties are looking at those important dates and putting in work to commemorate them. So the work that Brendan has done here is enormous, absolutely enormous. And I know, like many of you, I grew up on hearing the stories of these people. I was delighted that coming from Killahy that there's a white from Killahy on it, but as Michael Dignan would have hurled against me, he knows I'm not even a relation of a hurler, so that's true. There were the other whites, but I am related to the Carrolls through the mother's side. So anyway, delighted to have any association with this. Thrilled that we have a crowd like this at history presentations. I've been at several presentations in Croke Park with historians that have travelled from overseas, and you would get a third of this crowd at it. So it's fantastic to see the interest that's here this evening, and we're delighted that so many people have shown up. So without further ado, I'm just going to hand you back now to our Cathaoirleach for the evening, Pat.
Right, we're almost ready to go on to the main event. But just before that, I just want to say, tonight has been a labour of love for Brendan Minnock, a project that he's been working on for the past 18 months. And I think the importance of this occasion should not be underestimated, either from a historical point of view or from an Offaly GAA point of view. Now, for those of you who don't know Brendan is the Assistant Secretary of Offaly County Board. He's also Leinster GAA PRO. He started out his life as a journalist. He's now a member of Garda Síochána. So his amount of research and attention to detail that he put in getting this presentation ready, I think if he was to leave the Guards, he'd get a job on Primetime Investigates. Brendan travelled far and wide when he was checking and rechecking facts and uncovering memorabilia. And he's probably the only person I know that went to New York for the St. Patrick's Day Parade and spent his time in libraries and graveyards. I don't want to steal Brendan's thunders, but in his talk, Brendan will not just highlight the details of the hurling campaign that brought glory to Offaly, but he'll also touch on the troubles of the 1920s and how immigration impacted on so many of our team. He will show how the hurling tradition was passed on down through the generation and the links between the 1923 team and the success of the 80s and 90s, and indeed right up until the present under-21 All-Ireland hurling team. He also has a few gems of videos to show you. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Brendan for about the next 50 minutes or so.
Hello everyone, and thanks very much for turning out in such large numbers. I know you don't mean to be intimidating, but it is a little bit, so just bear with me if you can. But look, you are all very welcome to this centenary commemoration event for Offaly GAA. And look, in keeping with our sense of nostalgia tonight, if only for a bit of fun, could we try and cast our minds back exactly 100 years ago at this very moment? Because it would now be 7:46 p.m. on the 12th of October 1924, and just a few hours since Offaly's first All-Ireland title success at any grade or in either code. That's how significant this was. Offaly have defeated the favourites Cork in a long-delayed 1923 Junior Hurling Championship final at Croke Park by 3 goals and 4 points to 3 goals and 2 points, lauded in newspaper reports as a thrilling game which was splendidly contested all the way. Now, despite this being the junior grade, and I'm not sure whether rules were adjusted or tweaked, but let's be sure, this was a contest between Offaly's best players and many of the leading lights from Cork, a couple of whom indeed would go on to captain the Lee-siders to Liam McCarthy Cup glory within the near future. So this really was 2 star-studded teams taking the field. Now, Cork were described as cocksure leading into the game, some things never change, with Offaly labelled in one media outlet as no hopers. And yet, as has happened so many times subsequently, our team overcame the odds to hold out for a dramatic victory. Now, after enjoying a post-match meal in Barry's Hotel, some of the Offaly players have decided to stay in Dublin to celebrate their triumph with the novelty of attending a silent movie near Dublin city centre. How times have changed. I'm sure you'll agree, a long way removed from Copperface Jacks. But that's where they went to celebrate this achievement. Others are making their way back to Kingsbridge railway station, now of course Houston station, with joyous supporters to make a contented journey home. Well, that's all except our midfielder Mick Carroll. Because after the game, Mick Carroll had to go to the Mater Hospital. He needs some stitches on a wound he received in the frenetic late stages of this game. Remember, it wasn't like now. We didn't have a doctor at all the games to tend to such injuries on the sideline or in the dressing room. And Mick may have smiled to himself had he known that 100 years later, Offaly would indeed have a doctor at all our league, championship and challenge hurling games, and that the doctor would indeed be his own grandson. I'm sure he would have thrown his eyes up to heaven at that. And indeed the tradition going on with Mick's great-grandson ushering on the Offaly minor team this year and other connections on development teams, etc. Now I wonder what was going through the mind of our team captain and stalwart fullback Jack Holligan of Kinnetty. As Jack boards the train to come home now, he could scarcely have imagined that despite many, many lean years that would follow for the faithful county, he would actually be the first of 16 men to captain us to All-Ireland glory between 1924 and 2024. And if you see, there's not misprint, it is 1923, so excuse me if I'm skipping between 23 and 24. The final was delayed, as you know. They are 10 hurlers and 6 Gaelic footballers, among them some of the most famous names ever associated with the Gaelic Athletic Association, and not just in Offaly. And while Jack's name has largely faded from memory, despite his massive contribution to hurling in Ireland and New York, he will forever hold a special place in the annals of Offaly GAA on top of that illustrious list, which I'm sure we are all so glad to say was extended only a few months ago with Dan Burke and the under-20 hurlers. And what about Jim Carroll of Coolderry? Perhaps sitting on the train coming home with another renowned hurler of that era, his brother Joe. And Jim must have been overjoyed to finally make up for the disappointment of losing the All-Ireland Junior Final of 1915. Now, Jim would have known there was no open-top bus waiting for this team in Tullamore or Birr. No bonfires or celebrations organised at all. I think they deserved a little better. But I'm sure it would have been beyond Jim's wildest dreams to think that he would be alive to see Offaly finally reach the holy grail of hurling some 57 years later, and that 30,000 people would greet the Liam McCarthy Cup winning side. And on that occasion, and indeed for all 4 of Offaly's All-Ireland senior titles, his descendants or relations would play crucial roles, among them grandsons Joe, Billy and Johnny Dooley and Liam Hogan, along with other relations such as the late Pat Carroll, the late Pat Malockley and Pat O'Connor. I'm sure Jim would have been so proud to realise that. And of course several of his great-grandsons, too many to mention nearly, have worn the green, white and gold with distinction. So it is the tradition, and tradition being so important to Offaly GAA, that Jim, his teammates and others in the county helped to forge 100 years ago, both within their family settings and the wider community, that sees Offaly continue to go from strength to strength. And it's not just in hurling, in camogie too. We will learn that current reigning camogie player of the year in Offaly, Sheila Sullivan, her granduncle was on this panel. And Claude Lahi, a member of the current Offaly camogie team, her great-granduncle was on that team also. So loads of connections, and I'm sure I will be informed of more after my presentation finishes tonight. But the most special link of all, actually, between our first and last All-Ireland title I'm delighted to inform you, is that Frank Doherty, being a member of the 1924 panel, and his great-grandson, Mark Mulrooney, was a member of the 2024 Under-20 panel, which brought honour to Offaly this summer. A fantastic connection there, I think, also. Now, going back to another survivor of the team that came so close to success in 1915, another really, really contented man leaving Dublin, and I'll tell you why. Jim Carroll actually was interviewed in 1981, and he joked that you could nearly shoot a duck in one of the pitches they were expected to play in back then. And that got me thinking of, that's the truth, that got me thinking of Peter Lyons. Because no doubt Peter Lyons really enjoyed his return to play in Croke Park after years of turmoil in Ireland. The smooth surface and the wide open spaces. Bearing in mind that pitches in Offaly and elsewhere then, they were often set up in bumpy ground and poorly marked. They had no other choice. And we can only guess that Peter would be in a state of shock if someone foresaw that when some 93 years later, the Offaly GAA would officially open a state-of-the-art training facility in Kilcormac called the Faithful Fields, with 4 perfectly laid and fully flooded pitches. And not only that, but thanks to the generosity of his descendants, but also the esteem in which his name is still held, that one of those 4 pitches would be named in his honour. What a fitting tribute to one of Offaly hurling's longest-serving stalwarts, whose career at adult level with the county stretched from 1913 all the way to 1937. So it is, as I said, the contribution of these men, their teammates, and many, many more who kept the flag flying for Offaly through a really difficult era in Ireland's history, which I think and I believe deserves to be commemorated by Offaly GAA. And okay, their achievements on the field of play did not equal those who brought ultimate glory to Offaly in both hurling and football in the 70s, 80s and 90s. They most definitely overcame many, many odds to bring glory and honour to the county. And the fact that it was a junior All-Ireland should not, I believe, diminish their achievement in any way or underestimate their standard of play, because we had some of the best hurlers in Ireland at that time, without a shadow of a doubt. And sadly, we will never know what this set of men could have achieved, only for emigration and to New York and the roaring 20s across the Atlantic, which robbed our county of many of our top players. This is a project we have been working on for the past year or so. The team didn't get much recognition at the time, and obviously their deeds have faded from memory. And to be honest, to even account for the All-Ireland winning panel has been difficult. Years of searching for a team photo has proven fruitless, and the only reason we've put that photo there is we do know there was a photographer at the game, because that was in the Irish Independent the following morning. And I'm hoping that somewhere in an attic there is negatives that will emerge, that we will have a photo of our team, please God. To the best of my knowledge, there was no programme, but a panel of 20 players was listed in newspapers before and after the game, which I have taken as factual. Though there may have been an extended panel, who knows? I don't know. That's the best we can do. So rather than apologise for an omission later on, let me say I will gladly add to the list of names I'm going to call out, should documentary evidence or perhaps a medal come to light in the future. That would be great. But for now, as we can see on the list in the Sunday Independent, from Kennedy came Jack Holligan, Andy, Bill and Mick Cordial, Dick Conway, Ned Hayes. Drumcullen provided Peter Lyons, Bill and Pat Fox and Mick Spain. Coolderry's Jim Carroll and Jack Horn. Birr's Willie Ryan, Martin Whelan and Tom Sullivan. Birr native Stephen Cloonan with Tullamore. And from the current Kilcormac catchment area were Mick Carroll, who hurled mostly with Kennedy, Frank Doherty, Nicholas White and Jimmy Murphy, who lined out predominantly with Killahey. And I should have said Martin Whelan and Tom Sullivan would be from the catchment area now represented by the Carrigan Riverstown Club. Now these players were aged between 22 and 40. I have all their birth certs. With our gallant goalkeeper Ned Hayes, the only player to have won an All-Ireland medal with Offaly, who was actually born before the Gaelic Athletic Association was officially formed. Born in February or March 1884. So fair dues to Ned. And sadly too, their years of death actually spanned from 1942 to 1991, with the aforementioned Mick Carroll and Andy Cordial living into their 9th decades. Mick passing away here in Ireland, and Andy Cordial, 6,000 miles away, laid to rest in Maryland, USA. We must note, though, that strictly speaking, tonight is not the only time their deeds have been honoured. Back in 1981, a special year for Offaly GAA, the supporters club then organised a function for the hurling, football and Gaelic football and ladies football teams that either won or reached All-Ireland finals. And survivors of the 1923 and 1929 Junior All-Ireland teams, we won it again in 29, were invited. And the Midland Tribune generously described them as the brightest stars in the galaxy of Offaly All-Stars. 11 members of those teams attended, though I am aware that at least 8 or 9 of the 1923 team were still alive to witness this occasion, albeit some of them in ill health and more of them in America. "Did you ever see such a night like this?" said Bill Cordial, looking hale and hearty, and freely advising all the younger hurlers who won All-Irelands in 81 the tactics that they should use for the following year. No bother to Bill. Now, the breakthrough All-Ireland victory we are commemorating tonight came at a time when the GAA was finding its feet again after a decade of turmoil in Ireland. And this will reflect in quite a topsy-turvy championship campaign, to say the least. Hurling had to take a back seat for many of the players during the revolutionary period. Now, I better hold my hands up and say I am not an expert on this period of Irish history, but if people wish to read more on the subject, there are really some insightful books by renowned authors, foremost among them Tullamore's Paul Rouse, who's also involved with Offaly GAA, and I will refer to some of those works soon. And neither is it my intention tonight to chart a complete history of Offaly hurling, because we'll be here till midnight, but that dates back to hosting the first All-Ireland final here in Birr in 1887. But as a starting point, I'm going to return to the team I mentioned already, the 1915 Offaly Junior Hurlers, which I touched on my introduction, because they almost prevented tonight's event from taking place. We nearly weren't here, because they were nearly the first team to win an All-Ireland final. They beat Meath in the Leinster final at Croke Park, then won the All-Ireland semi-final before meeting Tipperary in the All-Ireland final. And that final wasn't held until 20th of August 1916, and they lost agonisingly by 1 point, 1-6 to 2-2 in Athlone. The team having travelled from Birr to that final on the back of a lorry supplied by D.E. Williams. Now you can see in the photo 3 players who went on to win All-Ireland medals 8 years later. A young Jim Carroll in the back row, and then Mick Cordial and Peter Lyons side by side in the middle row. And I know some other relations of that 1915 team are welcome here tonight. Frank Redden, I know my friend Enda Redden is here tonight, and they're welcome also. It is noted in captions under that photo, which obviously you can't see, that brothers Paddy and Tom Sullivan were absent when it was taken. And this brings me back to how do you figure out who was on panels, etc. But there is no doubt the Sullivan brothers were involved in, because the family have the medals to prove it. And from the Leinster final of 1915, from the Leinster final of 1915, now, these are the first inter-county medals won by an Offaly team ever, and it's great to have some of them still in existence. And they were shown to be in his house. We had a great fireside chat with Dermot Sullivan in Carrick earlier this year. Sadly, Dermot passed away during the summer. He was to be one of my guests here tonight, but I thank Dermot and the Sullivan family. Lovely medals to have from 1915. Now, even by then, the GAA was being affected by world events. It has been recorded that during World War I, from 1914 to 1918, Birr lost some of its best hurlers to fight with the army. And the same probably applied to other clubs. Indeed, one of the players we are remembering tonight suffered the death of his teenage brother while fighting in that war. Then in the aftermath of the Easter Rising in 1916, the GAA remained closely linked with the national movement. Now, Mick Carroll was also interviewed in 1981, and he said then, when we played hurling then, it was more than a game. It was an unequivocal assertion of our national integrity and independence. Mick recalled the so-called Gaelic Sunday in August 1918. The British authorities banned the playing of Gaelic games without specific permission. But the GAA defied this order and held matches in almost every parish in Ireland at the same time. A massive success, with games played in several locations in Offaly, forcing the authorities to abandon their demands. Elsewhere, it was noted that Crown forces generally regarded the GAA as a nest of rebels, an image that informed the decision of those who targeted Croke Park in Bloody Sunday, November 1920, when 14 people, including one player, were killed. There were stories of the army cutting down trees and uprooting goalposts to disrupt matches. Now, during the War of Independence, many championships were delayed or postponed, and most of our All-Ireland winning team actually had some role in the pre-truce period with the IRA. If you look at this photo of the Offaly hurlers, that is taken from the Rat internment camp in the Curragh in 1921. And believe it, it includes Bill Cordial. Now remember this from later on. That is Bill Cordial there. And side by side with him, are Bill Fox and Jack Horn, other members of the team. The photo also includes Hugh Corrigan, whose brother James captained Offaly in the 1915 final, and PJ Grogan at the back there, I think is the same PJ Grogan who captained Offaly to win the 1929 All-Ireland Junior Hurling Final. And I have to mention one good man from Rahan, that's Nicholas Clavin there, and his nephew, Father Nicholas Clavin, won All-Ireland medals with Offaly footballers in 1971 and 1972, my neighbour. So remarkably, there were actually so many GAA players interned there from various counties that they somehow got permission to play tournaments there. And the Offaly company of the IRA won the junior football final. A great final win. I should have said, look at the broken window there. I don't know whether it was from a slitter or what it was from. But Offaly won that junior football final. And what's even more remarkable, they got a set of medals, which was organised by the Kildare County Board, I believe. And even more remarkable, is that that's the book actually. That book includes the names of every member, every person from Offaly who was interned in the internment camp in the Curragh at the time. And I said that, we won the junior football final in the Curragh camp, and they were actually presented with a set of medals. And I couldn't believe it in New York this March that Bill Fox's granddaughter still has the medal that was presented to Bill in 1921 in the Curragh camp. And I didn't say it at the time, but it's one of my ambitions to get that medal back to Offaly. I think it must be one of the rarest medals in existence in the Gaelic Athletic Association. Now, I forgot to say with the players in the Rat camp, poor Andy Cordial wasn't as lucky because Andy was in Mountjoy prison at the time, sentenced to hard labour. So this is the obstacles that our players were overcoming at the time. Now, I've mentioned books already. There's also local histories. I've read one in Drumcullen, which is an interview with Peter Lyons. Militaryarchives.ie. Sorry, the next slide, please. I was just going to skip saying that because of the troubles, we had no county finals in 1921 or 1922 in Offaly. That's understandable. And the 23 final between Kinnity and Clara was played in 24. Just, again, an example of the difficulties. But if anyone wants to delve more into the archives, fascinating information on militaryarchives.ie, and a revolution in profiles, Offaly.com, is a website by Aidan Doyle, who's with us tonight, and it's fascinating profiles of people there, including one of Mick Cordial, and I'd highly recommend that to you as well. So moving on, then there was the bitter civil war, which I will note, but pass over for fear that miscommunication through incomplete research may lead to mistakes. But as I said, it's hardly surprising that the finals in Offaly did not take place. Now, at the same time, Leinster Council did succeed in running off a provincial junior hurling championship in 1922, which Offaly won. And that was captained by Paddy Sullivan. We saw his medal from 1915. And it would include some players who lined out in the All-Ireland final nearly 2 years later, among them Mick Spain, Pat Fox, Bill Fox, Nicholas White and Mick Carroll. But there was no All-Ireland series. So I'm finally getting around to the start of the championship. But I wanted to try in the space of 5 minutes, put the difficulties and the efforts that these hurlers were going through into context, and they emerged from this to bring happiness to the county through their exploits. Now, Offaly's Leinster Junior Hurling Championship campaign began with a first-round fixture versus Kildare in Athlone on the 27th of May 1923, and it resulted in a comprehensive win by 9 goals and a point to 2 goals and 2 points, and many supporters travelled on special trains to watch 3 inter-county games that were on the programme. The Offaly Independent said the huge crowd actually gave denial to the rumour and the fear that the national pastimes were dead in the Midlands. They were not. Willie Ryan of Birr was noted as the outstanding figure on the Offaly side. We're up and running now. 2 months later, Offaly defeated Dublin by a single point, 1-4 to 1-3 in the Leinster semi-final. But this result was subsequently declared null and void. Dublin objected, of course. They said that Offaly didn't submit the proper list of players before the game, and a refixture was ordered. Now, between the hopping and trotting and everything, this replay didn't take place until November. That's what the disturbance at Dublin caused us. But anyway, we played them again in November, and we convincingly beat them this time again, 5 goals and 2 points to 2 goals and 1 point. Guess what happened? Dublin objected again. And this time, our championship, and your presence here tonight, was hanging by a thread, because Dublin representatives claimed at the Leinster Council meeting that Bill Cordial had played under a false name in the match. Now, I should have said earlier that Offaly did actually line out in the Leinster Senior Hurling Championship in 23, but lost to Laois, and Bill would have played in that match, so he shouldn't be playing against Dublin. Now, 2 of the Dublin players alleged that they had spent 7 months with the Kennedy clubman when they were prisoners in the Curragh. How do we get out of that one? I wouldn't like to be in front of a barrister there. But anyway, a masterstroke, because Stephen Cloonan and the person identified by Dublin as Bill Cordial attended the meeting. And Bill said, or whoever said, that no, he didn't give a false name to the referee. He gave a false name to the British authorities when he was arrested, and that he was living under a false name in the Curragh camp. That's one for the circuit court, I think. And, he said he was in fact Jim Conlon. But to the objection, Stephen Cloonan said, we'll call for a vote. And the objection was defeated. Now, we all know that Bill Cordial definitely was in the Curragh camp in 1921, because I've showed you the photo. But if we could have a gentleman's agreement here, please don't tell Dublin, because we don't want another objection. They've got 2 already. So this decision paved the way for the Leinster final to proceed on the 16th of December 1923. Offaly and Laois spurned the opportunity to play in Croke Park in favour of competing in Dublin. The weather was gloomy in the morning, but it improved as the day progressed, and a fairly large number of spectators attended, many again who arrived on specially organised trains. Scores were slow to come in the opening half, with Laois eventually opening their account with a point, and Offaly replying with a Stephen Cloonan goal shortly before the interval. Throughout the second half, play was faster and more exciting. A hat-trick of goals by Willie Ryan, that man again, put Offaly in control. And despite a late comeback by Laois, who had a player sent off, Offaly held on to retain this title by 4 goals and 1 point to 3 goals and 2 points. And this team now, I will say, was considerably different than the team that won the All-Ireland, but several members were involved, including Stephen Cloonan, Willie Ryan, Pat Sullivan, Jack Horn, Jim Carroll, Mick Carroll, Frank Doherty, Jimmy Murphy, and others. We don't know who played under what name, of course, as well, at this stage. So that's just a little advertisement that you see that was for the Leinster final, and advertising the trains and how much it would cost to get into the match. So there was a renewed focus for 1924. We're moving now to 1924. And I think, we won't say that this championship was delayed due to amateurism or, any back were thinking by the GAA at the time, there was an awful lot of struggles. Communication was still very poor, etc. So, fair is fair, I think. We're moving along nicely enough. And there was a renewed focus for 1924 displayed when the Offaly GAA convention was held at the end of February in the parochial hall in Kilcormac. Delegates applauded when the county board secretary and our inter-county hurler Stephen Cloonan said Offaly's goal should be to win not alone the junior but the senior All-Ireland this year, and to emphasise the need for a more serious approach. The Tullamore Club, probably on Stephen's backing, proposed a motion, and I quote, that players notified to attend practice matches in preparation for inter-county matches who fail to attend be suspended for a period of 6 months if you don't turn up for a challenge game. Now, I can think of one occasion as late as the 1990s when we were lucky that rule was still not on the books. It's not right, Michael? We might never have won the All-Ireland in 1998. Now, according to the secretary, some players like Nicholas White of Colohy, our centre-back, often cycled 10 to 12 miles to attend practice matches, while others who lived convenient to the venues did not turn up, and this motion was passed. Nicholas White showing the same type of commitment and determination to represent his county that we saw from his cousin, the legendary Eugene Mulligan, on the football fields of Offaly in the 1960s and 70s, cut from the same cloth. And on a similar note, when County Board Chairman Lar Malloy of Drumcullen, he announced to the delegates that some players now almost want a motor car to bring them to the matches. Delegates burst out laughing. Lar, of course, himself was a former Offaly hurler, and we remember that his son Paddy Malloy is still remembered as one of our county's greatest ever players. Eventually, the 1923 All-Ireland Junior Hurling Championship final, Offaly versus Galway, was fixed for the sports ground in Athlone at the end of June 1924. Special trains were run from Galway and Birr. Again, it was a lovely day for hurling. As I said, the Offaly line-out was considerably changed to the Leinster final. Really, all of our talented hurlers in the county, some of whom had represented the senior team in previous years, were selected to play. Galway were more disorganised, and Offaly won the match 7-5 or 7-6 to a point, and so progressed to the All-Ireland final against Cork, which was pencilled in for the following month. We're getting there, okay? But unfortunately, further interference ensued. Orders were sent then to all IRA, which would be anti-treaty IRA volunteers across the country, to approach GAA county boards and county players and request that they withdraw from their respective competitions. It wasn't a junior All-Ireland only that still had to be played. The senior final with Galway and Limerick wasn't played yet, and I believe the senior football final, I hope I'm not wrong, Kerry and Dublin, that wasn't played. So the senior final then, Galway and Limerick, was called off, and Cork decided they would not play Offaly until all the prisoners, including their county board chairman, Sean McCarthy, were released. Consequently, the Central Council awarded the final to Offaly, who had, in quotes, informed the council that they were willing to compete. Now, this led to uproar at an Offaly County Board meeting in Kilcormac in late July. A resolution was passed by the Road Club that Offaly GAA actually repudiate the actions of certain members of the junior hurling team in taking a walkover from Cork, and we endorsed the action of the Cork County Board in refusing to carry out the fixture while some of our best Gaels were interned without trial. This is after the Civil War. And we suggest that the County Board take action and have the above match played when circumstances permit. Amid heated scenes, County Board Secretary Stephen Cloonan, he denied that Offaly had accepted a walkover. We had agreed to go to play the match on the understanding that Cork would too. A delegate from Cork had told him so. And then the walkover was actually awarded at a Central Council meeting which no Offaly delegate was present at. So there was a lot of confusion in times where there was no emails or even phone calls and things. But it was a very, very difficult meeting, which is widely reported on in the local papers in Offaly. Chairman Lar Malloy eventually said that they had to save the reputation of the county and preserve the honour of the team. Ultimately, a resolution was passed that Offaly County Board would refuse to take the walkover in the Junior Hurling All-Ireland Final and were willing to play Cork when a fixture is feasible, thankfully. And this averted a potentially acrimonious split in the county. And it was in keeping to maybe a small extent of the proud claim of the association that throughout the brief but bitter civil war, it not only held itself together, but played a part in keeping together those who were opposed to one another politically. And I do know among the Offaly panel, there were players who were opposed to one another politically in this period. So later, the Central Council did agree to fix the senior final again, Galway v Limerick, and the junior final, Offaly v Cork. There's just one other significant event of note in 1924, and it's really important that I incorporate it into my talk. This was the staging of the Tailteann Games Festival in Dublin in August 1924. And I'm going to quote directly from Paul Rouse's book, Sport in Ireland, A History, when he wrote that the new government of the Irish Free State held an extraordinary sporting and cultural festival in Dublin in 1924. The Tailteann Games was the biggest sporting event in the world that year, bigger even than the Paris Olympics, with more than 5,000 competitors taking part in a remarkable range of sporting events. Interestingly, it included an international hurling tournament. And the USA team actually travelled over to play Ireland in that tournament. And it included some Offaly men, among them J.J. Redden and, crucially, PJ Grimes. Now, PJ Grimes was a hugely prominent figure in the Irish-American community in New York. A former hurler with Kinnity, he went on to establish a travel agents in New York and bought the Irish Echo newspaper, which he published for many, many years. And I've even, since I started this project, heard anecdotal evidence of how PJ Grimes was so helpful to families in Offaly who had to come back to the country here for emergencies such as funerals, etc. He did huge work to promote the GAA in the city, including purchasing land for pitches, and he was a cousin and friend of the Offaly captain, Jack Holligan, which may be significant later on, and that's why I needed to just mention that there. Now, as well as the international game in the contest in the Tailteann, there was an inter-provincial hurling tournament held in Croke Park. Leinster defeated Connacht in the semi-final and Munster in the final. And from various reports, it's known that Andy Cordial, Willie Ryan, Stephen Cloonan and Jack Holligan were involved in one or both of those games. And indeed, in the final, Andy Cordial scored 4 goals and a point, helping Leinster to a 7-point victory. And this is real good evidence that Andy was emerging as one of the leading forward talents in the country at the time. The following month, Offaly played Kilkenny in a challenge or a benefit game and won the match. Needless to say, all our players turned up, and this was great preparation for the All-Ireland final, which was scheduled for Croke Park on the 12th of October, 1924. We have arrived. Now, again, I'm referring back to interviews that Jim and Mick Carroll conducted, albeit nearly 60 years later. Jim spoke of going to 6 o'clock Mass before a lot of the matches he played in Croke Park, heading up on the train afterwards. Mick said, for this All-Ireland final, that they travelled the day before. And Nicholas is white. Remember, he's the man that cycled 10 and 12 miles to matches. His father was shocked when a car actually came to pick him up in Killarney to bring him to the train station in Dublin. A great honour at the time for Nicholas. Now, what we do know is a train carrying Offaly supporters, and you can see the advertisement for the final there. A train carrying Offaly supporters, and maybe some players, I don't know, landed at Ballybrophy station just after a train carrying a lot of Cork supporters also landed at the station. And there was a lot of yahooing and cheering, and when the station master signalled for the Offaly train to proceed and head to Dublin ahead of the Cork train, and this was seen as a great omen at the time. Maybe the station master working in Ballybrophy was from Offaly, who knows, but he gave us the go-ahead to head for Dublin. So we were ready for this game now, ladies and gentlemen, we were ready. And newspaper reports have given considerable coverage to the final. I'm not going to use my imagination. I said at the start of the project to use our imagination, but this is everything I'm going to say for the next few minutes. To summarise the afternoon's events were from newspaper reports, and just study the different turn of phrase maybe that journalists used at the time. The game actually had a throw-in time of 3:15 p.m. following an All-Ireland junior football semi-final between Antrim and Carlow. Offaly's line-out would have been something like this. Ned Hayes in goals. The full-back line of Bill Fox, Jack Holligan, the captain, and Peter Lyons. The half-back line, Pat Fox, Nicholas White and Jim Carroll. Midfielders, Mick Carroll and Jack Horn. Deadly half-forward line of Bill Cordial, Martin Whelan and Jimmy Murphy. And then a star-studded full-forward line, Mick Cordial, Andy Cordial and Willie Ryan. Subs were Mick Spain, Dick Conway, Frank Doherty, Tom Sullivan, and we're told that Stephen Cloonan was injured for this final, although he was listed in the panel in the Sunday Independent, but I believe he was injured. Now this was an epic struggle, a battle of giants from start to finish. On the Monday after the game, the Freeman's Journal said, much was expected of the hurling final between Offaly and Cork. It exceeded in tenseness, cleverness, determination and in skill, all anticipations. Few senior finals could have excelled it in hurling merit, and none in respect of the cleanness, sharpness and quickness of come-on play. The Irish Independent stated that the hurling was a capital exhibition, splendidly contested all the way, but particularly in the closing stages when play was generally admitted to have reached a standard rarely exceeded by seniors. And later in the week, the Gaelic Athletic reporter stated, I saw a good deal more than I expected. For one thing, this junior final was above the standard produced by many senior finals I have witnessed. In no previous hurling contest have I seen such a decisive test of men and merits. Offaly were indeed the surprise packets. Now we defended the railway goals in the first half, and we opened the scoring when a clearance from Peter Lyons was taken on by Nicholas White, whose long drive upfield was whipped up and over the bar by Andy Cordial. So if ever you hear me asking a quiz question, the first Offaly player to ever score in an All-Ireland final at Croke Park, Andy Cordial. Jimmy Murphy and Bill Cordial threatened more scores without success. Cork got off the mark with a goal, the favourites Cork, but that man Andy Cordial replied with a goal of his own, and then Martin Whelan, the Carrick man playing for Birr, followed with another goal to put Offaly ahead once more. Great defending and goalkeeping by the experienced Ned Hayes kept Cork out, but unfortunately they did add a goal and a point to leave it 2 goals and a point each at the break. Now in the second half the pace intensified. Mick Cordial had to retire injured. He was replaced by his clubmate Dick Conway, and the substitute passed to Martin Whelan, who edged Offaly in front again with a point from far out. But Cork drew level, we couldn't shake them off. Then Willie Ryan fired over a point, giving Offaly a lead, and this time it was never relinquished. Jimmy Murphy and Bill Cordial supplied Andy Cordial for his second and Offaly's third goal. And at the 22nd minute of the second half, Bill Cordial collected the ball under Hill 16, made an angle for himself and shot straight and through between the posts. 5 points in it now, but as we know, 5 points in hurling is not a safe margin. Cork came thundering back, the danger man Crotty, and in a flash the ball was in the Offaly net. 5 minutes remained and the danger margin between the sides, 2 points. Could we hold out? The red jerseys came storming into the Canal goal, but the Offaly defenders were inspired. Superbly marshalled by Jack Holligan, they hurled back the Cork attack. The leather bobbled dangerously, inches from the line, but somehow Ned Hayes scrambled it away. Crotty went streaking goalwards. The leather was a blur as it left his stick, but there it was, miraculously it seemed, Jim Carroll coming out with the ball in his hand and clearing it down the field. 3 minutes left now, and Cork keep coming. The ball hovering dangerously in the Offaly goalmouth until a frantic stick sent it hurtling into touch. 2 minutes left, and to Offaly supporters, every second was an eternity. As the red jerseys kept coming and coming in front of the post, Peter Lyons and Nicholas White cleared in turn, but the relief was short-lived. Are we going to win this match at all? Because 30 seconds remained, something that could still send shivers down our spine 100 years later, because Offaly conceded a free 50 yards out. A point was now useless to Cork. It had to be a goal. Their free taker, Murphy, he flighted it in perfectly, and it landed at the edge of the square where limb, leather and ash exploded in a terrific melee. Stalemate reigned for brief seconds. Somehow an Offaly defender swept the ball clear, the referee blew the final whistle, and Offaly had won the All-Ireland final. I think we need more than a little bit of a silent movie now, I think, after that. But I promise I didn't make it up. The reports were fantastic from the match. They were absolutely fantastic. Anyway, I know time is ticking by, but I'm not finished yet. If you can stick with me. Okay, that's no one's... Okay. I won't skip over little bits and pieces. So. But anyway, anyone that knows me well has to know that I have to dampen the mood a little bit, okay? Just a little bit. Because 2 weeks later, I don't know whether it was organised by the county board or whatever, but Offaly received a bye into the Leinster Senior Hurling Final. It was deemed that we were good enough to play in the Leinster Senior Hurling Final, where they were to meet Dublin. And again, this was in Croke Park. And unfortunately, through no fault of our own, it was a bit of a disaster. Again, Jim Carroll said in 1981 that we were done out of it, and he was probably right. Because Dublin put out a team of guards and military men, he said, that had the pick of the country. Easy, I know, blame the guards. I hear it every week. But, you know, he had a point. He had a point, because the Civic Garda and Garda Síochána had just been formed at that stage, and inter-county hurlers from across Ireland flooded into the guards, and were stationed in Dublin, which made them eligible to play in what was the 1924 championship. Now remember that, 1924. And the most famous of those players who joined the Guards was actually Mick Gill of Galway. Now Mick Gill of Galway had won an All-Ireland medal with Galway just a couple of months earlier, in September 1924, the 1923 final with Galway. Remember I said that was delayed as well. But he joined the Guards, was stationed in Dublin, and suddenly he now appeared on the Dublin team for the Leinster Senior Hurling Final of 1924 with Dublin. And they beat Offaly, and they went on and won the All-Ireland Final. Now Offaly were so unhappy with refereeing decisions that they walked off the pitch at one stage, a leash referee. And in all, it was a frustrating experience. But deep down, we just wonder what might have been had Offaly won that Leinster final. Had we got fair play, had the Guards not attracted so many inter-county hurlers from other parts, maybe, and if we'd gone on and won the All-Ireland, it might have changed the whole course of Offaly hurling history. Who knows? But I just have a special clip tonight for you with conducted with Bill Cordial in 1982, the legendary Bill Cordial. And I don't say that lightly, he is an Offaly legend. And he was interviewed by Brendan O'Reilly for a series called Talk of Times Past. Brendan had built up a rapport with Bill in the mid-70s after presenting him with an Offaly Sports Star Hall of Fame award in 1975. And Bill actually recalls the All-Ireland Junior Final and the subsequent Leinster Final. Now, he merges 1923 and 94. I probably have done the same myself tonight, but he is in his mid-80s. So this is just a 4-minute clip. What I can say was a lovely interview. We delved deep into the RTA archives, and we eventually came up with this. Now, if people at the back can't hear it properly, I'll move the microphone down. So just someone stand up at the back, just if you can't hear, because I want everyone just maybe to hear this. Thanks.
County Offaly won the All-Ireland hurling title for the first time, the senior title, in 1981. Offaly has always been the poor relation of neighbouring County Tipperary in hurling, but they had great teams along the way, and particularly in the 20s. The Offaly Junior team won the All-Ireland in 1923, and in 1924 they almost won the senior title. Well, one of the members of that team is 86 years of age today. He's lived all his life down on his farm at the foothills of the Slieve Bloom Mountains. Hasn't been out of there for 50 years outside the county, but today he made the long trip up to Dublin to talk with us, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you, Bill Cordial, to the programme. Bill, you won an All-Ireland, didn't you, with the junior team in 1923?
23.
Who did you play in the final?
Cork.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, we played Cork.
Had they a good team?
And on that Cork team, Cork come along in 1926 and they won the All-Ireland. And there was 6 or 7 came off that Cork team that we beat in 23.
There was.
And 6 or 7 of the best of the Offaly hurlers gone out to America.
Went to America
Went
after
to
that.
America.
I see.
And if we had to have them, in 1924 then, we played Dublin here in Cork Park, and we had to come to Dublin the night before and stay overnight in the noise of the cities and the bells ringing in the morning. We got no rest. So, good God, we played into the Canal Gold, and we had 3 goals in the net, I think, before Dublin got anything.
You did.
So they pulled up on us. The last 20 minutes passed us out, and Andy went out to Hill 16.
That's the brother Andy.
Brother Andy.
How many brothers were on the team? Yourself and Andy and
Mick.
Mick.
3.
Three cordials.
3.
So
And he
Andy went out
crossed-
to Hill 16.
And he crossed the ball into the square. Willie Ryan came across from the other side and knocked it into the net to leave us very close to Dublin.
Yeah.
So, good God, we protested and left the field and sat down.
Oh, wait a minute now. The goal wasn't allowed, was it?
The goal was disallowed.
It was disallowed?
The goal was disallowed, and some of the Dublin players admitted it was a fair goal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, why did they maintain it should be disallowed? Why did they say it wasn't a fair goal? Was there somebody in the square or something when it?
There was nobody in the square. We blamed leagues umpires.
There was 2 leagues umpires.
There were leagues umpires, and Pete Daly, Rat Downey, was the referee.
I see. And you think that
And when we were sitting on the sideline, Pete Daly threw in the ball amongst that Dublin team.
first of all, now you all left the field. Did
We
you?
all left the field in protest.
In protest, yeah. And sat down.
And while we were sitting down, he threw in the ball, and Dublin went down and floated the net and got that goal. And the goal was disallowed on us. That's all we were beaten.
I see.
And they beat Cork in that All-Ireland and beat Cork 2 goals. And there was nothing disallowed on Cork.
I see. So that was very unfair, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, now tell me, that Dublin team at the time, was it made up of all Dublin players?
Oh,
or?
God, they were in the Guards and the Army. And Dr. Tommy Daly, I think, out of the university, was in goal. Matty Powell Kilkenny, Bilder Welsh, Bob Mockler, Tom Finlay of Leaks, Mick Gill of Galway, Dexter Aylward
Of Kilkenny, was
of
it?
Kilkenny,
Kilkenny.
Bilder Welsh and the great Bob Mockler.
I see.
And
there
how
was hardly a Dublin man on the team
not
at all.
a Dublin man on the team. And Fowler McInerney of Clare, he was full back, I think. Fowler McInerney.
Yeah.
Isn't he here in Dublin?
He's
yet?
still alive. He is indeed. He's 93 years of age.
Oh, good God.
He's probably watching the programme
Well,
now.
imagine we expected to beat that team, a pick out of 5 little South Offaly hurling teams.
Clubs, 5 South
And
Africa.
they may blame us for not being able to win something, as much as say we weren't hurlers at all. Well, the present Offaly team that's after winning the All-Ireland, they have proved that they can hurl. There is hurlers in Offaly.
Indeed. I was right there in what I said.
And
that you,
great credit to them and great praise to the Offaly team. They have it proved that there is hurlers in Offaly.
indeed.
Now, look, I know I'm running behind time, but I am going to go into the American aspect of the story in a few minutes, which is fascinating. I just have a couple of little tidbits on some of the players. Like, of the 13 players who remained in Ireland, many of them continue to hurl at the top level for Offaly and enjoy success with their clubs. Now, I can't go into the level of detail I would like due to time constraints. I have researched it all, who won what titles, etc. And there is a little booklet there for family members, which we will hand out shortly. And if anyone else in the audience would like one, I'll take your number. But Birr, Coolderry, Drumcullen and Kinnity all won senior hurling titles in this era with players involved. I mentioned Stephen Cloonan before. Stephen Cloonan deserves to be remembered as one of the truly great GAA administrators in Offaly. He was secretary in 1923-24, did so much work, as you saw behind the scenes, to stop us even being thrown out of the championship. And he remained as county board secretary for over 30 years, and he was still in the position at the time of his untimely death in the mid-1950s. And among his lasting legacies is he was the mainstay really behind the development of O'Connor Park. And until it was redeveloped again, 15 or 20 years later, the Cloonan Terrace there was named in his honour with that stone. So that's just something about Stephen Cloonan. Then Peter Lyons, as I said, a lovely photo. Someone showed me Pádraig Corn on one side, Peter Lyons, identifying Peter's long career, 1913 to 1937. He came out of retirement in 1937 to play against Westmeath in the Leinster Senior Hurling Championship. And then I said Bill Cordial won the Offaly Sports Star Hall of Fame in 1975, which at the time was organised by Tullamore Harriers, and Jim Carroll was presented with it also, I think, in 1983, and you can see him receiving his award there from Martin Furlong. So it's not fair maybe to be picking out a few players, but just Bill Cordial that we saw there, he was actually the first Offaly hurler to play in a Railway Cup final in 1929. His brother Mick went to America, but before he did, Mick actually was on the first Leinster, the first Railway Cup started in 26 and 1927, and Mick Cordial has a Railway Cup medal from that. I've seen it, it's in Kinnetty, in a private collection. He played in the Railway Cup semi-final, and he was a sub in the final. So Mick Cordial, so if you include Bill, Mick and Andy then playing for Leinster in the Tailteann Games, the three Cordials played for Leinster. So I believe did Peter Lyons in 1928. There was, I should have said, of course, Offaly as well did contest the Leinster senior finals in 1926 and 1928, and Peter Lyons captained them on both occasions. And others on our team that we're celebrating tonight, like Mick Spain, Mick Carroll, Nicholas White, Stephen Cloonan, featured prominently in those finals. Unfortunately, we lost both of them. And Dick Conway, who came on as a sub in the All-Ireland final, he actually won a second All-Ireland junior medal with Offaly in 1929. Meanwhile, Martin Whelan, who scored a goal and a point in the All-Ireland final, he was living in Toomevara and winning medals with that club, and actually lined out for Tipperary on a couple of occasions when he was living in Tipperary, as I said. So I'd love to go into more detail, but time is passing by. If you just bear with me for another few minutes, because I wanted to, can we look at another quick clip of Bill Cordial? Have we time? Yeah.
So how did it all start? When did you begin to play hurling?
Well, we started, when we first started out to see hurling. Mm. And we'd come back home, there was four of us at home.
Four brothers?
Four brothers. And we'd get the hurley sticks and go out. And we'd watch all the player that was able to drive a ball a good distance off the ground. Mm-hmm. And we'd put down the ball on the field and run at it till so far we'd drive it.
I see.
And we practiced at every ball coming. We never stopped it.
Mm. And how long would you practice every day now in those years?
Well, we'd have everything done up in the evenings.
Mm. That'd be about what time in the summer?
It would be about 7 o'clock in the summertime, and then we'd go out and maybe hurl for an hour and a half. We'd spread out off long distance and drive the ball as far as we could from one to another, but we'd never stop it.
You never stop
the fast bowly ball coming up to us, we'd run at it.
And meet it on the ground.
But
then you started playing for the local club in Kinnetty.
In Kinnetty.
And what was the first thing you won, can you remember?
We were playing a first little championship. We won, a young lad, a junior championship. Mm. And we're playing this team from Clara. And I was on this young player. And balls let fly at balls passing. And I said, what the devils, as I are you pulling that stick? Yeah. He never minded me, and he pulled away every time I come up. Well, when at half time, didn't I hear? I was playing on a priest,
Is that right?
a young priest. I never went near him after.
You didn't? Did you say any hard words to him?
No, oh God, I didn't like in case I might strike him or may come out with something that I shouldn't come out with. I never went near him after.
You were very embarrassed.
A Father Keenan.
I see.
When I started this project, it actually started with a tweet, more the fool I was, before Offaly played Cork in the 2023 All-Ireland Under-20 final, remember in Thurles 18 months ago or so, and I just put out a tweet with the Cork and Offaly teams wondering was there any relations playing, and a few people got back to me, and one thing led to another, and a friend of mine then in Kilkenny who I exchanged programmes with actually gave me the history of the GAA in New York, a fabulous reference book, really take a magnificent work. And I couldn't believe it one night over the winter when I was flicking through it, that some of the same names that I was researching for the 1923-24 Offaly team were appearing time and time again as leading players over in New York. So that really, I suppose, gave me the motivation and the confidence to keep going. And I'd like to just inform you, if you still have time, of the impact that some of our players went on to have in New York. Now, the first indication that our All-Ireland winning team was about to break up came from the Kings County Chronicle on the 12th of March 1925. It reported that Mr. John Horn, that's Jack Horn, our midfielder, the prominent Offaly hurler who has let his farm at Cree, leaves for New York at an early date. Now, Jack was actually born in Boulinary, which I think is in the Banagher parish. Someone can correct me, near the golf club. But he moved to live with his aunt and uncle in Coolderry, and that's how he ended up having a farm there. But worse news followed for Offaly only 3 weeks later. The same newspaper reported that Cordial, Holligan, Ryan and Fox, that's Andy Cordial, Jack Holligan, Willie Ryan and Bill Fox, leading members of the All-Ireland hurling team, left for New York on Wednesday morning. They were seen off at the station by a very large crowd of friends. Their loss to hurling in the county is very serious, and never was there a truer word said. Now, when everyone else was drinking in New York and I was in the library, we found this photograph, actually, of the four lads just after landing in New York in April 1925. Suited and booted, and really nice tweed caps there. That's Jack Holligan, that's Bill Fox, I think that's Willie Ryan and Andy Cordial there, our four-star hurlers. And it actually says they were invited to New York to play. And I said, this is why I mentioned the Tailteann Games in 1924. Maybe PJ Grimes and others who came from Offaly told him that whatever the urban equivalent of hills or green far away, that New York might be the place to go. But now I could tell you how many was on the boat. I can tell you who they were going to play with. The records online nowadays are absolutely fantastic. So that, I think, is a really lovely photo. I'd love to get the original, but even at that is one we might put up in the Faithful Fields or somewhere, along with the one maybe in the Cork camp. Now, 4 years later, Pat and Mick Cordial, who I said had won the Railway Cup medal, left for New York. So in a short space of time, 7 of the starting 15 from the All-Ireland final had departed. Not to mention many other star hurlers from Offaly who emigrated. Of course, Bill and Pat's brother, Hugh Fox, another prominent player who had played some part in the 1923 campaign, in the Leinster campaign. Now, needless to say, it wasn't just Offaly hurlers who went, even though we appear to have been particularly badly hit. There was star players from other counties, many with All-Ireland medals. And the result was that the GAA in New York flourished, with big crowds attending hurling and football games in the city. Offaly dominated the competitive senior hurling championship for around 15 years. Like back home, some of the finals ran a bit late, but the Roll of Honour speaks for itself, including 4 in a row between 1925 and 1928 inclusive. Match reports from those finals clearly show the influence of our 1924 stars. For example, in the 1926 final there, Andy Cordial scored all 4 goals. He also scored both goals in the 1928 final. And remember, these were the years that we were losing Leinster finals in Croke Park. You know, in 1930, Pat Fox and Willie Ryan scored the goals, and Andy Cordial fired over 3 points. Mick Cordial and Andy Cordial scored well in 1935, and so did Willie Ryan. With Bill Fox and Jack Horn feature prominently in the match reports, as of course did Jack Holligan, who was by now captain of the Offaly team in New York. His leadership skills coming to the fore obviously again. Now local papers in Offaly even reported on these achievements and wrote about how they were bringing honour to Offaly back here. That was the respect that they were held. Now this is one of the photos. It's easier actually to get photos of the team in New York than it is in Offaly. And there's a photo of the team. I'm not going to go through everyone, but that's Paddy or PJ Grimes here that I've mentioned. And more of the team that played there, Pat Fox, Andy Cordial, Willie Ryan, Mick Cordial, Jack Horn. That's Jack Holligan. You see the way the jersey had captain wrote across it at the time. That's Hugh Fox. I could be skipping over some now. I just can't remember them all. And interesting, that's another interesting character. He wasn't on our All-Ireland winning team, but that's Paddy Daly from Tinkelcormac. Now we're guessing Damien White is that he was an uncle of Charlie Daly, the Offaly selector from '81, and he actually was a member of the army before going to New York, and he played in the All-Ireland Final in 1926 or 27 for Cork, believe it or not. So, and again, there's other really renowned hurlers. Dinny Walsh there from Tullamore, he was on the Railway Cup winning panel with Mick Cordial in 1927. So apologies to other, back row, Ed Walsh, Brendan Dooley, another really famous hurler of the time. I think his grandson was saying he may be joining us here tonight. I'm not, hopefully that's the case. So that just gives you a snapshot of the talented team that we had in New York at the time. Now, meanwhile, in 1926, the GAA started a new initiative here that saw all Ireland champions in both codes start to venture over to New York for challenge games. In 1926, as the reigning New York champions, Offaly team in New York took on Tipperary, and although beaten, it was a remarkable occasion which attracted over 30,000 spectators to the Polo Grounds. Can you imagine the atmosphere at that game and the pride that the Irish expatriates were experiencing, being able to see so many star players? Tipperary travelled over again in 1931 and Cork in 1932, and again Jack Holligan captained of the New York team at this stage. Now, I've already spoken about the impact of the Tailteann Games in 1924, but there was obviously huge excitement in the GAA community in New York when it was announced that the Games would again take place in 1928 and hurling would again be among the featured sports. It was a great honour, no doubt, for Jack Holligan to be chosen to captain the USA. It was effectively New York, okay, but it was the USA hurling team to play Ireland in Croke Park on the 12th of August 1928. So at this stage, Jack had captained Kennedy, the Offaly junior team, the Offaly senior team, the Offaly team in New York, the New York senior hurling team, and now the USA hurling team. So very few can equal that, I'd say. And he was joined on that trip home. And this was a time that a lot of people went to America and could never get home. So he was joined on that trip home by three of his teammates from the All-Ireland Junior Hurling Final of 1924, Jack Horn, Andy Cordial and Willie Ryan. And I'm pleased that there was a company at the time, and Pat can press play there, called British Pate, and they recorded hundreds and hundreds of videos in Britain, Ireland and elsewhere of games. Now this is silent. You could say we're all watching a silent movie now because there's no commentary here, but this shows a little bit of the USA versus Ireland hurling match in the Tailteann Games in 1928. You can see the two teams marching around, the USA team on the stand side, the Irish team on the pitch side. They're walking there in front of the Hogan stand, which by now was actually named the Hogan stand. And really, you could only imagine the pride being felt by people from South Offaly and Kinnity to see some of their teammates in that USA parade. And leading the team there with the USA is our All-Ireland winning captain, Jack Holligan. And I think it's fascinating to be able to bring some action photos or pictures of the player. There they are standing for the national anthem with the massive crowd in the background. And we've an opportunity now just for 30 seconds or so to see a bit of hard pulling. Lot of ground hurling. I don't know who's throwing in the ball, but we can see, as I said, the crowd. That's the bank, which will be the Hill 16 end, and you can let it run on there. And again, Nothing soft out there, I can tell you. Yeah, okay. Don't get too worried now, it's okay. So the game, go look at the USA player clocked on the ground there. And the match still going on. No blood subs. So look at hard hitting. But look at, I would hope that GAA people in Kennedy in particular would be proud to see, and even, you know, for something like schools in Kennedy to show about Jack Colligan maybe in the future that, you know, he had such an impact in hurling. I just thought that would be nice. And we can go on. That was a team photo taken in Croke Park. That's Jack with the slitter as captain of the team. That, I believe, is Andy Cordial, Willie Ryan and Willie Ryan and Jack Horn. That's the four Offaly. Jack, Andy, Willie and Jack again. So that's the four of our All-Ireland winning team from 24, 4 years later, back in Croke Park, representing the USA against Ireland. Who could have believed how their lives would have taken such a turn? Now, an additional bonus for the four men was an opportunity to visit their home county a few days later for a challenge game against Offaly in St. Brendan's Park. And this time, the people of Birr got the homecoming right. The returning heroes were given an incredible welcome on the Tuesday night. A procession was led by the Birr Catholic Young Men's Society and included a huge number of clergy, supporters and members of Birr Urban District Council who accompanied this USA team through the town. Barrels of tar blazed along the route, and when the players and officials finally reached their hotel, which is the hotel we're in here tonight, the New York GAA president, J.J. Duffy, climbed up the stairs and spoke out the window to the huge crowd to thank them for their hospitality. That was the reception they received. Now, the USA team won by 6-6 to 5-1 in an emotional occasion, and included playing against some of their former teammates, including Peter Lyons, Mick Spain, and I know Stephen Cloonan refereed that match. So with hurling going really strong in New York, the 1932 games was again held for a third and final time in Croke Park, although it was not as successful. But the Offaly players again came home with the USA hurling team, and selected on that occasion were Jack Colligan, Bill Fox, Jack Horn and Brendan Dooley, who I mentioned. And if you can see them walk, if Pat could, sorry. Jack again is leading the team there, and Bill Fox is in the parade. It's okay, we can let it run on there. Again, just a brief little clip of Jack Colligan leading the parade, which I thought would be interesting. Look at this. Okay, Ireland getting a goal there. But look at they were the skills at the time, and so I'll just move on because so that's just a snapshot of the Offaly hurling achievements in New York, and I actually tracked down relations of all the players in New York. I made it a little bit of a crusade, and I was helped by relations in Ireland, including Hubie Bannon, a nephew of the Foxes, Angela Ryan, connected to Willie Ryan and others, you know, so it was great. But it was nice to meet some of them out there, and I've built up a rapport with some of them. Pat Fox, unfortunately, was the first of our 1924 All-Ireland winning team to pass away. We believe it happened in a work accident in 1942, though I cannot find the death notice, unfortunately, and I just planted a little Offaly flag on his grave this March in recognition of his contribution to us, and thanks Bill, their niece, brought me around to the graves. And I should have said earlier, this watch is in Offaly at the minute, and this is a watch from 1930. Great piece of memorabilia. It's a watch which was presented to Pat Fox after the 1930 New York Senior Hurling Championship final. And I presume it may have been a man of the match type award, but that watch is still going strong, and it's a great item of memorabilia to have in Ireland. Now, Willie Ryan was married with 2 children, but unfortunately he passed away young too in 1955, and a newspaper tribute to him said he was unquestionably one of the best hurling forwards in New York. And when the great Offaly hurling selection was making history, this flashy forward was an outstanding figure. And there's various photos of Willie there where he's buried in New York, and tributes to him, and putting a little bit more emphasis on the New York players, because they may not have as many in Ireland to remember them, although I know some do. Now, I've come across various references to Jack Holligan and Bill Fox in particular, who stayed involved in the GAA scene. Bill was chairperson of the precursor to the Offaly Sports Star Awards. And going off on a little tangent, one really interesting thing I hadn't been aware of was in 1961, Offaly obviously reached an All-Ireland senior final for the very first time. This was the senior football final against Down. And the men and women in Offaly organised an amazing fundraising collection and sent over $1,000 back here to assist in the training, which would be worth about €10,000 in today's money. A massive help to the county board. And PJ Grimes and Jack Holligan and Bill Fox were among those deeply involved in that fundraising venture. Now, another honour was bestowed on Jack Holligan in March 1966, when he was named as the special guest at the annual St. Patrick's Day Ball organised by the Offaly Football and Hurling Clubs in New York. And you can see the tribute to him was mentioned in the Midland Tribune in recognition of his outstanding contributions both in New York and Offaly. Sadly, a year and a half later, he passed away in St. Joseph's Hospital, Yonkers, following a short illness. He'd never married, but was mourned by his brother and sister in Kinnity, relatives and a loyal group of friends. Many members of the various hurling and football clubs in New York attended the wake and funeral, and former colleagues, led by Bill Fox, draped his casket with the tricolour in tribute to his service to Ireland. He was laid to rest in the St. Raymond Cemetery in the Bronx, which I visited in March. And if people were wondering why I was going down to graveyards, but like, you know, the GAA, if you remember Bloody Sunday, a lot of the people who were killed in Croke Park on Bloody Sunday didn't have any headstones or graves. So I was saying, you know, if our first All-Ireland winning captain didn't have an inscription or a headstone, that I was going to do something about it. But thanks to the Grimes family and connections, I should have known they were not going to let that happen. So Jack is mentioned there on the headstone. Now, the timing of Jack's passing was particularly unfortunate, as excitement was building in Kinnity in 1967 ahead of their long-awaited return to a senior hurling final. Arrangements were made in Offaly here for players to wear black armbands. For the game in St. Brendan's Park, flags were flown at half-mast and a minute's silence was observed before the game. And this proved to me that although Jack had spent most of his adult life on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, he was still a really, really revered figure at his homestead at the foot of the Slieve Bloom. And perhaps, who knows, tales of his magnificent feats may even have provided a small bit of extra motivation to a new generation of Kinnity heroes, including young Johnny Flaherty, Lord Restham, and Percy in the goals, I think, who defeated Coolderry by 5 points. Elsewhere, I've met other relations. Jack Horn was married in New York and he passed away in 1972. And his grandson actually works in a pub in New York where I met him, which used to be called J.J. Keenan's, in honour of another great sports star from Offaly at this era, the cyclist J.J. Keenan, who was grandfather of Kevin Keenan. And Bill Fox passed away in 1981, and such was the esteem in which Bill was held that the Bill Fox Memorial Award was presented to the Offaly Player of the Year in New York for many, many years after his passing. So that left me with just one player to track down from the 20, and that was Andy Cordial. And I can't go into how hard that was. There was a few misprints in papers here locally at the time when Bill passed away that he was the last of the brothers to pass away, but through different genealogy websites, I found that he passed away in Maryland, USA, where he had moved from New York as late as 1991. He was the second last of our team to pass away before Mick Carroll. And it was sad that, you know, there's no mention of that in anything locally here, considering the contribution he made to Offaly hurling. I ended up Googling cordials in Maryland. I said, there can't be too many cordials in Maryland. And after various random phone calls, someone answered the phone. I said, are you related to Andy Cordial? He said, yes, I'm his grandson. So I said, bingo. So Bill Cordial is his name, actually. Now, he's never been to Ireland, but I've built up a rapport with him. We've exchanged phone calls and emails. And he is the proud owner in Maryland, some 6,000 miles away, of all of Andy Cordial's medals. And the one on the third on the right in the top row is his All-Ireland medal from we won in the 12th of October, 1924. So that's a little bit of history from Andy Cordial and his grandson Bill, and I look forward to him. Hopefully he looks forward sometime to coming to visit Offaly and Kinnity and see where his grandfather played hurling. So it's really a long way when you think about it, from Kinnity to for some of these players to the Cork camp to Cropa. I should have said the graves there that were shown of Bill Fox and Jack Horn, they're not side by side, they are in that photo, but the three of them are actually, Jack Holligan, Bill Fox and Jack Horn are all buried close to each other in St. Raymond's Cemetery in New York. And if you thought I was putting Offaly flags there, it's amazing when you go to these graveyards how many flags from different counties and GAA counties are actually on the graves out in New York there. You know, well worth a visit, I think. So I'm nearly there. The only other bit of news is that thanks to connections we built up, or I built up with members of the Birr Historical Society, John Hoare and Patricia Grimes, who are related to PJ Grimes, who in turn was related to Jack Holligan. We did have a great discovery this year, because when John travelled to America and met with some of his relations, the Grimes family, he was actually discovered Jack Holligan's medals in one of the Grimes houses in New York, and thanks to John, he was given permission to get a loan of Jack Holligan's medals, which had been in New York for 99 years, and we have them with us here tonight if anyone would like to see the All-Ireland medal won by our first captain and other medals of Jack's collection. So fantastic, really special to have those medals with us here tonight. And John has posted some photos of Jack up on the wall there, which I would encourage you to look. So that's it. There's just one other clip to finish off, and this is again of Jack Holligan. Now, there was a movie or a film done in New York in 1932, and it's narrated by someone who really doesn't know anything about hurling. He actually thought the players were mad. He talks about manslaughter, you know, but again, I mean, it just made this project so special because there's no mention of Jack Holligan, but if we just roll it there, or I might have to go down, but it just shows the skills of Jack Holligan, which I think we really need to, you know, remember tonight. So just 1 second.
Here, my masters, are stalwart players on a hurling team. In case you haven't heard, hurling is an old Irish game, a sort of athletic manslaughter. The idea is to sock a ball with this pretty club, or bat, or shillelagh. During a game, however, a stalwart player is sometimes socked on his stalwart cranium with this pretty club, or bat, or shillelagh. Like in golf, the grip is important, or is it? The ball looks something like an indoor baseball, probably due to the fact that it is an indoor baseball. But there's plenty of technique to this good old Irish game, my friends. Even a simple ground shot calls for timing, coordination, and follow through. To bat a grounded ball over the heads of your opponents involves a bit of dexterity. Lifted thus, you now smite it with all your smite. Pun intended. A hurling player must stroke effectively both from the port and the starboard sides. In this shot, the ball is hit on the bounce, so. Then, too, you may help your teammates drive toward the goal by hitting it in flight, if you can.
So, you know, I'm just going to conclude. Honor very generously described me as a historian at the start. I'm not. And I hope that didn't become too obvious, but I am trying. I'm a GAA volunteer, and I'm not embarrassed to say it. I'm very proud to be from Offaly and to be involved with Offaly GAA. It would be impossible for me to thank everyone that I harassed and tormented and asked questions about in this project. It took hundreds of phone calls to try and track down relations, etc. But I enjoyed it at home and abroad. Even last night, we're glad to get news from Florida that Willie Ryan's daughter, Willie passed away in 1955, but his daughter is still alive, living in Florida, and we got the good news that although the hurricane had passed close to her home, that everything is okay with Willie Ryan's daughter in Florida. So it's nice to find out little bits and pieces of maybe information that may not be relevant, but look, it's all part of it. I'm sorry, I was going to say a lot of sorries here, but maybe I won't if it's not necessary. It would be impossible to thank everyone who assisted. The cooperation of the families of the players and relations was very much appreciated, both in Ireland and America. And I do remember Dermot Sullivan, who I met during the summer, and also Christina Dempsey. I had a fantastic meeting with Christina during summer, facilitated by Patricia Grimes, and she was so nice to me, and she filled me in so much information about Ned Hayes, and she was the only one that was able to get me a photo of Ned Hayes. So, you know, I'd like to remember Christina and Dermot tonight. Michael Dignan and my colleagues of the County Board have always been very supportive of events, Michael and Colm here in the front row, and initiatives. You know, you can be a bit embarrassed sometimes when they're so busy trying to get things right in 2024, and I'm trying to say, hang on, I want to talk to you about 1924, but genuinely I do really appreciate, even if it's only a thumbs up and fire ahead, and nothing has ever been a problem with the Offaly County Board for the past 5 years in any initiatives we try to do, with whether it's PRO or further roles now, and really I'm genuinely thankful to Michael and Colm for that, okay? Damien, look, I turned to an awful lot of people because I genuinely didn't know what to do. Damien White and on the GAA's National History Committee, and Cian Murphy for their advice and support. My friends Pat Tehan and Evin Minnock, who are here for, again, more advice and shoulders to cry on at times when I thought I just wasn't making progress. Dermot Gagnon of Brosnan Press is here with us tonight, and I really want to give a special thanks to Dermot because we've a wonderful photo collage of the team. We have no photo of the team, but Dermot has done this up for me tonight, which we're going to present to some family members. And if people here tonight saw the raw material that I provided to Dermot and the finished product, that he's not a graphic designer, ladies and gentlemen, he's a magician. And I don't want to embarrass him, but Dermot, I won't forget it, and thanks so much. It was my good fortune to forge links with John Hoare and Patricia Grimes of the Birr Historical Society. Also Vincent Mullins and others in Galway County Board who organised a similar event to tonight to honour their senior winning team of 100 years ago. Honour Ridgeway and the Offaly Libraries, thanks very much. I really enjoyed engaging with you all. In the early stages of my research, when this is really early, I benefit from the knowledge of great Mick Spain of Drumcullen. He's in the second row tonight, and it's been great to build up a rapport with him over the years. Thanks, Mick. It's lovely to build up a rapport with you over the years. I remember one of my first phone calls trying to see how am I going to find out. Mick said, well, there's a Hubie Bannon living in Longford who was a nephew of the Foxes. And I said, Ginny, that's great because my mother is from Longford and it'd be grand. And it's only then Mick came back to me later, no, he said Longford, which is a townsland in Kinnedy. So, so that was, and when I got, so that was a great breakthrough and then my own 50 years ago, my own mother had Angela Ryan as her bridesmaid, and I couldn't believe it one night. I just texted her, did you ever hear of a Willie Ryan? And she said, yes, my husband was his nephew. And again, little things like that just give me motivation, because America is a big place. It's not that easy to track down people, as you know. Members of the Offaly Association in New York welcomed me with open arms in March. I did a little bit more now than libraries and graveyards. Paddy Hogan, who's with us here tonight, I think he took that photo of me at the grave. Dennis Nolan and the legendary Martin Furlong, who allowed me to carry the flag down in the parade in New York. And Kathleen Sullivan, Hubie Bannon's sister, Drumcullen native, who brought me around. So other than that, I have to acknowledge the historians and journalists who deserve credit for research in this area, which I tapped into, including but not limited to Paul from Offaly alone, Paul Rouse, Philip McConway, Jimmy Blake, tremendous help to me, Jimmy, if you're here tonight, I think. Aidan Doyle, a friend of mine who's done so much research in some of these places. Kevin Corrigan, who is himself writing a history of Offaly GAA. Sean McAvoy did me a really big favour earlier in the year. Sean's here tonight, thanks. And then, above all, the phenomenal records and statistics in the possession of Patrick Donegan, who's here tonight. I couldn't have found out as much about these Offaly players without Patrick's help. So, and anyone else, I apologise if I excluded it or omitted it. Pat Tehan told me I'd run way beyond time. I don't think too many have left, so that's a good sign, but I am gone over time. And I'm going to conclude now by bringing an end to what has really been an enjoyable project for me. And just before I finish, early in the night I asked you to cast your minds back, just for a bit of fun, 100 years ago at this very moment. Well, let's do it a second time tonight, because it would now be 9:15 p.m. on the 12th of October 1924. Just about 4 hours after Offaly have won an All-Ireland title for the very first time. Our great GAA county has made this breakthrough. And the word is probably seeping back to areas like Kinnity, Drumcullen, Killahy, Birr and Carrick and elsewhere of this great achievement. I'm sure it has. Now, the good news that I have coming back from Dublin is Mick Carroll did get patched up in the Mater Hospital, and he made it back down in time to see the silent movie in the city centre with some of his teammates. We know that because he said it in his interview. Other players have come back down in the train with supporters. It must have been a very contented journey, relaying those frantic 5 minutes when we held on for dear life to win this All-Ireland final. And, you know, the stories of that, I would like to think that there would be pride that we came here 100 years ago to relay this title. Now, as I said, the team had there was no fanfare back then, no bonfires lit, no speeches on the back of a lorry. And I think they deserved a little bit more. But maybe tonight, just maybe, we could make up for lost time. We have descendants, we have relations, we have clubmen, we have friends, and we have people who will be receiving this video in New York next week. So why don't we all now, for one final time, join together and give our own rousing welcome home to this team, and a round of applause to the Offaly team, All-Ireland Junior Hurling champions 100 years ago. Thank you. And I'm taking it that this standing ovation is for the 1924 team. They really deserve it. So thanks very much. And I look forward to being back here in 5 years' time when someone else can celebrate the 1929 team. So thanks for your attention.
Brendan may not have been a historian before tonight, but he's certainly one after tonight. I think anyone who knows Brendan knows that Brendan is, in occasions like prior to this, he's a worrier. He worries whether it's going to go right. He was, for the last 2 to 3 weeks, he was worrying, is it going to be too short? Is it going to be too long? Then he was worrying, will there be a crowd turn up? Will there be too many turning up? He's like a player before a match, but there's one thing I can say. He came out tonight and he gave an all-star performance. Well done, Brendan. Just before I call on Michael Dyke and say a few words, Brendan was a bit parochial earlier on. I want to be a bit parochial now and acknowledge the presence here tonight of Maureen Hanley, who celebrated her 100th birthday last Sunday. So, it's actually tremendous to have somebody in the hall that was actually alive when Offaly won their first All-Ireland. Now, as chairperson of Offaly County Board and All-Ireland medalist, Michael Dignan needs no introduction to you. Though I would say that if Michael was on the 1924 team, he wouldn't have been one of the players to go to the silent movie.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I actually don't know where to start after that. I suppose just to say, Brendan has thanked everybody that was involved, but Brendan, I'd just like to say to you that I think you've done the families of this great team and these great players a wonderful service tonight, putting together what you did, and the work you've put into this over the last 18 months is unbelievable. But you've also done Offaly GAA a service, because it's an outstanding story. It's something I'm probably ashamed to admit that I knew that Offaly won that All-Ireland, but I never thought much more about it, and I'm being honest about that. And any time I ever spoke over the years, I always talked about the 69 team that got to the Leinster final and were unlucky against Kilkenny, and Pat Delaney got the 3 goals, and we all heard those stories, and Damien Martin still giving out about it. And then when I was lucky to start playing with Offaly as a minor, and Offaly won with, I see Paddy, I think Gerard Coughlin's here, Mark Harding, probably more of the lads, but when the lads, I was looking at those lads from the 70s, I was born in 68, so I was looking at, as a young lad in the mid-70s, the great Kennedy team, and Rhinus and Coolderry and Pat Carroll and all the lads, and I would have looked at the 81-80 Leinster final as my motivation as a 12-year-old. And all the lads I played with then would have looked at the 81 team, the 85 team, and then we came with our team in the 90s. And we'd hoped that we would have inspired some of the young lads that won the All-Ireland this year. But not knowing what these men had done was a big piece missing of Offaly history, and certainly missing for me, because I've no more than everyone said that got up here tonight. I'm extremely proud to be from Offaly. I love this county. I think we're an unbelievable county. And Brendan, it's absolutely superb what you've done. The connections are unbelievable. Some of the things I was thinking there during your piece, you mentioned the lads leaving the pitch and the sat on the side of the pitch, and we went and did it in '98 again. Most of you were probably there, so we have to do what we have to do to win sometimes. And that challenge match that we're going to get 6 months, you mentioned the challenge match with Offaly in '98. That was Babs, you might recall, that we arranged a match with Tipperary, or Babs did. Now I can put my hands up and say I was in Clonmel for the match, and half the team didn't turn up, or maybe a few more after a few lies were told. And Pat's right, there wouldn't have been a silent movie after our All-Ireland wins as well. But no, it's a brilliant story, brilliant people. It's uncanny as well to see the resemblance of some of the people, like Peter Lyons, looking at him there. If you look at the Lionses now, maybe it was like looking at maybe at some of the lads' own. And you mentioned the pitch and the Faithful Fields, and Peter obviously designed the Faithful Fields and as an architect, and it's amazing that link and all the other links, great links with the great players as well. And I suppose that's what Offaly has always been. But we also welcome in all the people that have come into the county over the years. My own father, God rest him, was a Connemara man, and my mother was from Tipperary, but she spent many years here as well. So it's that's history and that's life. And many of these went to New York, and other people luckily came to Offaly through Board Namon and the ESB, etc. So look, you've had a brilliant presentation for Brendan. I'll let you enjoy your cup of tea, but just to say again, delighted to learn what I've learned tonight. Brendan, I think it's going to form a huge part of Offaly GAA going forward. Brendan mentioned this beautiful collage, I suppose you'd call it, rather than a team photo that Brosnan Press have put together. Brosnan Press will do such brilliant work for us in Offaly GAA, and we'll be very, very proud to hang one of these in O'Connor Park, but I think more fittingly in the Faithful Fields in our training centre. I don't know if you've all been there, and I'd advise you to go to the Faithful Fields and just take a little tour around the facility. But in our dining room in the Faithful Fields, where the players eat every night after training, we have all our winning teams on the wall of the Faithful Fields, so the players can look and reflect. Johnny Pilkin had actually said to the under-20 team this year, they had their lunch before they went to Kilkenny for the All-Ireland, and Johnny doesn't say much in the dressing room, and the lads asked him would he say something before they left, and Johnny just looked at them and he said, "Do you want your photograph on the wall or not?" And there was nothing else to be said really, was there? And it's now on the wall, and this was missing from that wall, and I'm very proud to bring this back tomorrow and hang it on the wall in the Faithful Fields. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.